I was raised Scandinavian Lutheran in America. And I'm proud of that background, but one of the problems with Scandinavians is that we have very low expectations for life. And this is one of those things I was taught. Let's read this out loud together. 1, 2, 3. Expect less in life, then you won't be disappointed. And you have to say it with a Scandinavian accent. Yeah, you expect less in life, don't you know? Then you won't be disappointed, you idiot. You know, that's how it goes. And it's a really bad way to live life. Does anyone here want to get to the end of your life and say, well, I kept my expectations low and sure enough, nothing happened? I think that this kind of thinking is a curse. And we often use this kind of thinking, even if you're not Scandinavian, as a way to protect ourselves. If we keep our expectations low in our relationships, with our finances, with our spiritual growth, with whatever it happens to be, then we won't be disappointed. And it's easy when you've been hurt in life, and all of us have. And if you haven't yet, it's coming. When you get hurt in life, it's easy to pull in and start expecting less. If you've had a bad breakup, it's hard to get into another primary relationship. If you've gone bankrupt, it's tough to believe that you're going to live in abundance. If your vocation, your career ends abruptly and you're laid off, it's hard to believe that you can do something useful in the world. And it's easy to lower our expectations. Who here has been tempted, or actually done it like I have, to lower your expectations? This is not the life of faith. This is not what God calls us to. So today we're going to talk about abundance. John 2, 1 through 12. The story is the wedding at Cana, which is turning water into wine. And it's Jesus' first big miracle. So let's look at the story itself. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. I've actually been on the road, and there's a sign there that says Cana, which is just fascinating to see these places are still around. Cana in Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now, both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. I think the mother had something to do with the putting on of the wedding. It feels like that. The mother was there, and by the way, Jesus and his disciples were invited. So there they were at this wedding in Cana. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Now, sometimes when moms complain to us, they're really accusing us. I don't like the way this is in here right now. This room is such a mess. What they're saying is we need to clean it up. And in German, they have a phrase that klagen wird anklagen. Complaining becomes an accusation. And so this is a little motherly undertone here. They've run out of wine, Jesus. And there's an implied sort of action point here. Now, for those of you who are women, raise your hand if you're a woman. You got to be more straightforward with us guys. Just tell us what you want us to do. Because sometimes we don't fully understand what you're getting at. Because women have lots of different layers of communication and all kinds of things that are very complex that none of us men understand. Okay, so be clear with us. And Mary could have been a lot more clear with Jesus. They have no wine. Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." This is what I love about the Bible. If the Bible were made up, it wouldn't be this tense, and the people wouldn't be so real. This story is very raw. If you're an adult living with your mom, there's going to be some tension. And there's some tension in the house. This is real life. People say, well, the Bible is kind of raw. I said, well, that's what makes it sound so true. So, you know, this whole, who's heard the song, Mary Did You Know? She knew. Gabriel told her that this is going to be, Jesus is going to be a really big deal. And she knows, and she's trying to get him moving. Jesus was true God and also true man. And the Bible says he was tempted in every way. And he was tempted to play it safe here in his humanness. Can't I just go to a wedding and not be bothered? And sometimes we need a little Mary shove in our life to get us moving. I like comfort. I don't like change at all. I've had the same breakfast for as long as some of you have been alive. I like to wake up to the same wife. I've got a car, 1971, and if I can keep it running, I'll keep it running till Jesus comes back. But yesterday I was turning the ignition and the ignition started to smoke. I think that's a bad sign. I like things to stay the same, and I like to stay comfortable. And there's Marys in life who push us into, even Jesus needed a push here in his humanness. He's true God, but he's also true. And he was tempted to just sit back and go to the party. Can't I just enjoy a wedding party without you nagging me, Mom? My hour has not yet come. His mother said to the servants, so obviously she was in charge somehow of putting this on. And who thinks it's more fun to go to a party than to put one on? When you're putting one on, you're in charge of everything. And if you have it at your house, stuff gets broken and all that kind of thing. His mother said to the servant, whatever he says to do, do it. Whatever he says to do, do it. Who is the person in this story who's showing faith? Mary. Mary's faith is overruling Jesus. That's how powerful faith is. And it happens 2 more times with women in the New Testament. He's talking to the Syrophoenician woman. And she says, Jesus, could you do this for me? And he says, you're not a Jew. It's not in my job description. I'm here to reach the people of Israel. And she pushes him, and he says, it's not right for the dogs to get what the good people should get. This is not Jesus doing Dale Carnegie stuff. And she pushes him again. She says, don't at least dogs get the scraps that come from the table? She pushes him into action. Her faith activates Jesus. Mary's faith activated Jesus' miraculous work. The Syrophoenician woman's faith activated Jesus' miraculous power. And one more time, there was a woman who said, if I grab his robe, I will be healed. Did she ask permission? She just took it. Your faith is more powerful than you think. And the kind of faith you see in these 3 women is the kind of faith I aspire to. That woman who grabbed the robe, she is my hero in the faith. At least once in life, I want to have that kind of faith and put it into action. To the kind of faith to grab the robe and say, if I grab this robe, I will be healed. Who thinks that's up there on the faith scale? How many of you from time to time in your Christian walk need to have a little Mary push to push you out of your comfort zone? Our culture tells us right now it's a taboo to share your faith with anybody who is an unbeliever. If you don't believe me, you feel uncomfortable when you start to share it, don't you? Because our culture says you're not supposed to do that. Don't use the J word. Don't talk about Jesus. Not in the workplace, not in the school, not fill in the blank. You start to cross that line, you start to feel, ooh. Those are times where we need a little Mary push. Think how formidable the faith of Mary was here. Literally pushing her son into action. Your faith is more powerful than you think. Faith outranks everything. Move on here. Now there was There were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Who can do the math? How many gallons are we looking at here? John, you're an accountant. It's just a lot. Okay. This is not a little wine box, okay? This is a huge amount. Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. When the Lord asks you to do something, do it. When Jesus says, fill the water, how many of you think that they understood what was going to happen? They didn't. How many of you think that this was a little bit of a strange thing to be asked if you're one of the servants? You're out of wine and you're asking us to fill up these water things? That's a lot of work. These are heavy. By the way, speak of heavy, we need all the strong people here. After the service, we need to temporarily move the organ up here so we can carpet around where the organ is. That's going to take some strength. So we need you after the service, and also to put the chairs up here on the altar so we can put the new carpet in. So we're going to rip the carpet out, actually. So we need some help with that. Linda? Just the pedal part. Okay. Yeah, the organ looked big when you said that. I thought it's going to take 7 of us. Okay. But when the Lord asks us to do something, do it. I'm not going to tell you the story right now because it's a 40-minute story. But the Lord once asked me to make a soccer shirt. And it resulted in the biggest miracle of my life that I have no explanation for. I'll just leave it at that. It made no sense when the Lord asked me to make the soccer shirt. When Noah was asked to build an ark on a sunny day, it made no sense. When God asks you to do it, it might look strange, but do it. Just do it. And they did the water thing. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast. And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom. He said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and then when the guests have well drunk, I like that euphemism, then the inferior wine. You've kept the good wine until now. What we have here is Jesus doing a big miracle, quantity-wise and quality-wise. A ton of wine, and it's not Tyrolia. It's Chateau Lafite 1945, and lots of it. Quantity and quality. Sometimes we don't ask the Lord for the best in our lives, but guess what? Repeat after me. The Lord wants the best for me. If you've ever had kids, you want the best for them. The Lord is a better parent than you are. He wants the best for your life. Don't settle for less. Don't lower your expectations. We see this all the time with single people who would like to get married. Who thinks it's a bad idea to lower your standards just so you can get married? Really bad idea. If you're single, stay up high in the tree and make them climb to you. Make them come to your level. Expect the best. My tastes are simple. I'm easily satisfied with the best. That was Winston Churchill. And not just expect the best, but give our best. Now, some of you are too young to remember Steve Prefontaine. He was my hero in junior high. He was a track runner for the University of Oregon, and he was amazing. Amazing. He went like a whole year undefeated in races. Died very young in a car accident. But I love his quote here. To give anything less than your best is to sacrifice the gift. We need to give our best and receive the best. God wants the best for us, and he wants us to give our best to the world. We don't give what's left over to the church. We give our first fruits to the church. One of my biggest frustrations as a pastor is that people want to give junk to the church. And they call me up. We have an old couch that's worn out. We got a new one. Could the church use it? That's really sad. And I've had many dozens of phone calls like that. Could the church use it since we don't want it anymore? Or the other one, which I get a lot of. We have an old Lowry organ in the basement. Could your church use a Lowry organ? You know, the kind that goes and then you play along with it from like the 70s? Yeah, we just can't wait to get a Lowry organ. You're too good for it, but it's okay for the church. We need to put our best foot forward as the church. Get the best carpet we can, the best sound system we can, the best lighting we can. Why? Because when visitors walk in here, if we say we put the Lord first and the building says something else, guess what? They'll believe the building. We need, as best we can, to give of our best, not just with charity, but giving our best in our vocations, in our relationships. Don't you want to die saying, I gave it my best and really mean it? I used my gifts as best as I possibly could. This is the beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. The disciples saw this and believed in him, and they were the ones who shared the gospel. Here's what I want to say. Your story, your testimony, is the most powerful evangelistic tool that you have. You say, well, I can't share my faith because I'm not a theologian. People aren't interested in your theology. They're interested in what God has done in your life. And that's something they can't argue with. We had a wonderful, at our men's breakfast yesterday here at the fellowship hall, we had a wonderful talk from Matt Nakamoto. And he was asked to give his testimony. And he said to himself, I was raised in church. I don't have one of those spectacular testimonies. I've never done time. I've never sold drugs to kids. I was never found in a dumpster and then Jesus turned my life around. Those are spectacular testimonies, right? But the Lord showed him before he spoke, everyone has a testimony. And he shared his testimony about how the Lord got him through the struggle his wife had with cancer. There wasn't a dry eye in the place. His testimony was powerful. And you have a testimony. And I'm going to give you a little Mary push. And for some of you, this is going to bug you. But that's what pastors do. We're here to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. That's just kind of what we do. So I'm going to give you a little Mary push here. I want you, and some of you are trying to avoid eye contact, to pray about giving your testimony on video of something the Lord has done in your life. Stan, would you stand up for a second? Stan Katawaki, one of the leaders at the Well, has put together a website called How I Met My Father. It's been up for how many years? 3 years. And how many testimonies do you have on it? 100 testimonies? Look up the website, howimetmyfather.com. Talk to Stan sometime this year. You got a whole year. But I'd like you to share on video. All you need is a phone. If you don't know how to do that, have someone do it for you. And put your testimony on the website. Because your testimony might change the life of someone who hears it. Raise your hands if you've already done it. You've already done it. This is not a legalistic thing. You don't have to just because I said so. I'm challenging you, a little Mary push, to think about something the Lord's done in your life and to share that on the website. Share your story for the Lord's glory. This is not for your glory. This is for the Lord's glory. Kim's sermon last week was absolutely outstanding on taking it to the next level of discipleship, going from being a spectator of Jesus to being on the field. Now, this is football playoff season, and we all know the Rams didn't do so well last week, and a bunch of other things happened. And Detroit should not be. That's just a total disturbance in the force that the Lions are still playing. Because for my whole lifetime, they haven't done this kind of thing. But still, this is football season, and you have 60,000 people eating too much, sitting in the stands, desperately in need of exercise, and 22 guys on the field desperately in need of a rest. It's time to get out of our seats. And believe me, as a Christian, I prefer being a spectator to being on the field. And to be on the field means to share your testimony, to invite people to church, to buy a chair. I'd like to see 250 chairs in here, but you know what? The chairs are not the important thing. I'd like you to buy a chair, physically pray over the chair, and invite someone to fill it. And if they don't come, invite someone else. There's a story about that in the Bible. If people don't come, go out into the byways and get someone to come. Who thinks if we fill this place, it'll be really hard to close this place? Absolutely. And we're not doing it just to keep the place open. We're doing this because we want to reach the neighborhood. And every one of those people matters to God. And we want to include them in this wonderful family of destiny we've got. And do life with them, and eat with them, and sing with them, and all of those things. And you know what's going to win the legal battle? Lawyers, that's great. All that stuff, fine. Faith. Your faith in this church prevailing is way more powerful than you think. If two of you agreed in faith that this church is going to make it, not just make it, but thrive, it would happen. The Bible says so. What would happen if 60, 70 of us here agreed in faith? That we will not be moved. That we will continue to do ministry from this place. We have a little Mary faith. That we have a little Syrophoenician woman faith. That we have a little grab the robe faith. That's what's going to win this whole thing. World War II wasn't about guns, wasn't about military. It was a fight between two men, two of the best orators of the 1930s. Who were they? Adolf Hitler and Winston Churchill. And who gave the people of the free world the faith to fight? Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill won the war. The armies just helped him. Hitler was powerful, a powerful speaker. He could move a crowd of 200,000. We needed someone with more faith than Hitler, and we got one. Wendy's parents were living in Holland, and Holland was freed. In Rotterdam, where her parents lived as teenagers during the occupation, what did they call the town square after the war? Churchill Plain. That's the kind of faith that changes everything. Prevailing faith. Merry faith. Faith that overrules everything. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana, Galilee. Back to verse 2. And the mother of Jesus was there. Now both Jesus and the disciples were invited to the wedding. Why am I going back to verse 2? The first miracle, and this was a big miracle, by the way. you know what you have to do with the timeline to create aged wine? Jesus did a time miracle here. This was Tim's insight at the prayer meeting this morning. Jesus is master of time. Created aged wine in huge quantities. Big miracle in an everyday place like a wedding. You and I have everyday lives. I want you and me to start believing in miracles in our everyday lives. I'm talking parking spots. I'm talking ability to pay a bill. I'm talking reconciliation with a friend you've lost trust with. Those are my favorite miracles, by the way. Reconciliation. God's miracles can happen in your daily life and in mine. In regular things like a cubicle or a garage or a classroom. Your daily life is important to God. And he wants to do miracles in your life. You just need to respond with the kind of faith that Mary had. Expect miracles today, not just flashy miracles at church gatherings. I'm talking about real miracles in your life. Abundance, expect more. Some practicalities. Take the Alpha course. For some of you, this might be out of your comfort zone. And for those of you that it's not out of your comfort zone, here's something that is. Who here has friends who are unbelievers or family members? Bring one on Wednesday. How's that for a Mary push? One of my problems as a pastor is I know very few unbelievers because I'm always surrounded by church people. But you guys have a lot more contact with people who don't believe. Bring one of them on Wednesday. How's that for a little bit of a Mary push? Share your miracle stories with others. Do your testimony. Put your testimony up on the website. Bible bookmarks. Where are the Bible bookmarks right now, Tamara? Can I ask someone to go back and grab those and pass those around, make sure everybody gets one, in case you don't have one? Why do you need a Bible bookmark? To remember to get into the Bible. Why to remember to get in the Bible? Because you're gonna make friends with people who have faith like Mary. You read through the Bible, it changes the way we look at the world. It changes our worldview. And we need to spend time in the Bible's worldview. Getting into the Word on a regular basis makes a huge difference. Discard stinking thinking. Stinking thinking is don't expect much. If you don't expect much, you won't be disappointed. This is a terrible way to go through life. It's a terrible way to go through life. We want to expect more from life, quantity and quality. Discard stinking thinking. Remember that your faith overrules everything. Remember what Mary's faith did in the story. She even got her son moving when he was reluctant. Who's had trouble getting God moving from time to time? In our prayers, you think, what's going on here? Remember the faith of Mary. And the last one. Start seeing miracles. Then you start experiencing miracles. And guess what? When you start experiencing miracles, you start to see more of them. And you start to see more of them, you start to expect more of them. This is called a virtuous cycle. The more we see God in our life, the more we expect more of that. This is what we call spiritual momentum. You can tell if you got spiritual momentum or not in your life. You're moving forward or you're moving backwards. And to start expecting miracles is to engage in spiritual momentum. I'm going to invite the worship team up. We have communion available for people over here during the ministry time, and Tamara will talk to you about that. And if you take the bread and the cup, just today I'd like you to think of the cup as like the wedding wine. and take part in that miracle and say, I want more of these kind of miracles in my life. I want some water turned into wine in my life. We started by saying that I was raised in a church, wonderful church, Bible-believing church, sent out missionaries, great people, great parents, great family. But in my culture, there was an underlying thing that if you expect less, you won't be disappointed. My fondest wish is that we would all free each other from that kind of thinking and expect more in life. Let's pray.